there are so many powerful Pokemon out there, but these are 13 Pokemon who can break reality, from making dreams real to stealing the light of entire worlds to reversing death. Like, for example, Ho-Oh, who used its unique reality warping ability to give new life to 3 Pokemon who died way back when the Brass Tower in Akrutik City was burned down. Or a Pokemon that can distort space-time, Eternatus, an alien that crash-landed in Galar 20,000 years ago that's responsible for the region's Dynamax phenomenon, including the extreme forms of that phenomenon, Gigantamax and the one-of-a-kind Eternamax transformation, which not only makes Eternatus look like a giant Dr. Octopus arm, but after reabsorbing the Galar particles it lost after Zacian and Zamazenta defeated it 3,000 years before the start of Pokemon Sword and Shield, Eternamax Eternatus unleashes an energy storm so intense that it tears holes in space-time, kind of like how electromagnetic radiation can warp space-time in real life. And the reason that Chairman Rose wants to control Eternatus in the game's story is because the energy it radiates is infinite. But we can't talk about infinity without talking about Terapagos, because despite the fact that when people think Terapagos, they usually just think, oh yeah, the turtle behind Generation 9's battle gimmick, letting Pokemon change their typing is just the start of Terapagos' powers. And not only is the terrestrial energy in the Terra Crystals that Terapagos makes responsible for the Terra Orbs, aspects of the Blueberry Academy's terrarium, and, likely, the Herba Mystica, but this energy powers the creation of impossibly advanced AI and even a time machine. And this is where things get crazy, because the professor strongly implies that the time machine doesn't just allow time travel, but also travel between alternate universes, which is at least partially how Paradox Pokemon from parallel timelines started appearing in present-day Paldea. And yet what's truly bonkers is that many of the key events in the games may have happened even if the time machine was never created. Because in the Indigo Disc DLC, the professor is exploring the Area Zero Underdepth in the past, long before they create the AI or the time machine, when suddenly they're warped to a completely different time and place in the present, where we give them the book written by Briar, an event that we read about in a journal entry that was written before that event actually happens. Well, sort of. It's another paradox. The point is that the professor's jump through time-space from one Terra Crystal center to another happened in a timeline before they created the time machine, suggesting that the Paradox Pokemon, the collision of alternate universes, and the infinite loop of events actually have more to do with Terapagos itself than the time machine. And the idea seems to be that Terapagos and the Terra Crystals are capable of creating infinite possibilities, a theory that becomes crystal clear when we see Terapagos' stellar form, which is an obvious reference to the Turtles All the Way Down concept of infinite regress associated with the cosmic turtle from various world mythologies. Basically, Terapagos makes the Pokemon timeline even more broken than it already was, and we've got 10 more Pokemon who can break reality. But first, if you've ever wanted to try programming your own time machine, or perhaps a website, or a video game, I've got good news. Today's video is brought to you by Boot.dev. Boot.dev's mission is to teach you programming, specifically back-end web development, through what's basically a super fun programming RPG with quests, levels, and achievements. Boot.dev also has leaderboards in case you want to get competitive, and they even do boss fights where the community gets together to get bonus experience for each lesson completed during the event. Now, the median salary for back-end developers in the US in 2022 was over $100,000 according to Stack Overflow. And not only is that a lot of money, but these jobs are usually remote or hybrid, which just gives you so much freedom. I mean, I say that as someone who has worked 100% remotely over the past 2.5 years and absolutely loves it. So with Boot.dev, you'll learn backend web development from start to finish in the Go and Python programming languages, in a self-paced way that feels like an RPG. And what's really awesome is how they get you hands-on, writing tons of code and completing real projects from day one. Plus, Boot.dev has a 30-day no questions asked refund policy, as well as a free demo of every course and its interactive features. So try it out by clicking the link in the description box and using my code CHADUSHADU for 25% off your first month, or even your first entire year if you choose the annual plan. And with that said, thanks to Boot.dev for sponsoring this video. Believe me when I say that the fact that Necrozma can bend space by opening and traveling through ultra wormholes is somehow the least interesting thing about it, because Necrozma can actually suck the light out of entire dimensions. Well, the truth is that Necrozma originally had the ability to give light, and as a giver of light, it was effectively a giver of life. That is, until the Ultra Recon Squad's ancestors tried to take Necrozma's light, badly injuring it and leaving it in a state of endless pain, wherein it has to desperately steal light from places and living things just to keep moving. So Necrozma started by devouring all the light from the Ultra Recon Squad's world, Ultra Megalopolis. As a result, the people there have grayish blue skin due to the lack of natural light. And if stealing the light from entire worlds wasn't enough, the anime adds that Necrozma can even absorb a world's Ultra Aura, sapping the energy and willpower of its adults. Now, once Necrozma absorbs enough light to transform into Ultra Necrozma, it becomes a being made almost purely of light. And since, according to Einstein's theory of relativity, light doesn't experience time or space, it's possible that Necrozma could even pose a threat to some of the most powerful reality-breaking Pokemon in the universe. Of course, there are ways to bend reality other than influencing light, time, or space, like, for instance, a good old-fashioned power boost. Cause even though Victini might not have the firepower of hard-hitting legendary Pokemon like Moltres, Entei, or Volcanion, it can create an infinite amount of energy within itself to massively boost the power of anyone it touches. For example, in the Pokemon Black and White movies, Victini boosts the power of Ash's Pokemon so that they can win unwinnable battles, boosts Ash's power so that he can jump over a massive abyss while carrying 2 Pokemon, then boosts the power of some psychic Pokemon so that they can float an entire castle through the sky. And that virtually infinite power boost is why the Pokédex in Pokemon Black says that trainers with Victini always win regardless of the type of encounter. Also, Victini likes macarons. And while this next Pokemon has nothing on another time abuser we'll be talking about shortly, the ability to travel through the past, present, and future as well as take other people and Pokemon along with it makes Celebi a reality warping Pokemon worth talking about. For example, in the Ruby Sapphire arc of the Pokemon Adventures manga, it uses a time slip to bring back several key characters who die in the final battle. And in the anime, Celebi's time travel abilities cause Ash to meet both a young Professor Oak and a young Professor Kukui, forever changing his world's timeline. Plus, Celebi can sense when someone or something does not belong in a given timeline, and quickly return them to their original timeline, like it does to Ash in Pokemon Sun and Moon. The cherry on the cake is that Celebi can heal serious injuries and rapidly speed up the growth of plants. But even more interesting is Jirachi. Like Victini and Celebi, Jirachi isn't all that strong, but it does have a fantastic reality warping power, the power to grant wishes. A power that everyone would want to have. I mean, Brock could wish to finally meet the girl of his dreams, Lawrence III could wish for unlimited Master Balls, and I could wish for at least one night of uninterrupted sleep. Then again, the actual portrayal of Jirachi's power is pretty inconsistent. For example, in the manga and TV anime, Jirachi can wish things into existence out of thin air, like a giant artificial Kyogre. But in the movie Jirachi Wishmaker, it can only teleport things to the Wishmaker. And let's not forget that Jirachi only wakes up for 1 week every 1,000 years, which might make Hoopa a much more useful ally, since it can bend space to transport people, Pokemon, and items across great distances, or even transport them across alternate timelines in Masters EX without any obvious drawbacks. Not to mention that things get even crazier when Hoopa changes into its true form, Hoopa Unbound. See, long ago, Hoopa caused so much destruction that its true power was sealed in a bottle. But if the prison bottle is opened, Hoopa transforms into Hoopa Unbound for 3 days, giving Hoopa so much power that it can transport entire islands or castles through its hoops, and even summon S-tier legendary Pokemon and drive them berserk, while causing violently destructive space-time distortions while he's at it. Unknown is one of the most underrated reality-breaking Pokemon out there, and while most players' first impressions of the Unknown are that they're just a bunch of Alpha-Getty monsters from another dimension, the third Pokemon movie reveals that they can bend reality to the dreams and wishes of anyone who controls them whenever enough Unknown gather together. And they warp reality again in the anime episode Star Night Starflight, where 5 Unknown cover a town in Johto in an endless night. But now it's time to talk about 3 Pokemon who truly make and break reality in the Pokemon universe, the Creation Trio. First, we've got Palkia, whose impact on space is so incredible that simply showing up in Pokemon Pearl causes space to destabilize. But not only can Palkia distort space, it can create new dimensions, travel between dimensions and timelines, or even Thanos snap entire universes out of existence. And Dialga, the Guardian of Time, is just as dangerous since it has complete control over the flow of time, meaning that on top of traveling through the past, present, and future as it wishes, it can do extremely disturbing things, like de-aging Pokemon and people to back before they were even born, which is almost as freaky as Giratina's control over antimatter. But what makes Giratina much worse than Dialga or Palkia is its violent nature and love of destruction, which is why it was banished to the distortion world. Now, in real-world science, antimatter is the counterpart to matter, and when the two collide, they annihilate each other, leaving nothing behind but energy, which means that Giratina is capable of destruction on an absolutely unbelievable scale. And while Dialga controls time and Palkia controls space, Giratina can distort both time and space within the distortion world, not to mention that it can rip holes in reality, creating space-time rifts that drive Palkia and Dialga absolutely nuts. Of course, no Pokemon can make and break reality like Arceus, who apparently not only created time, space, and antimatter through the Creation Trio, but also created Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf, who gave the world knowledge, emotion, and willpower. What's interesting is that the Arceus we see in the Pokemon world is just an avatar of the true Arceus who hangs out in another dimension. And yet, the avatar in Arceus and the Jewel of Life gives us a small taste of Arceus' power when it breaks the laws of nature, stops time, makes things vanish, reverses broken things into unbroken things, turns wastelands into prosperous lands, and so on. But if you think that's crazy, wait till you see this video right here.